Hello, welcome to Jason the Old Millennial. My name is Jason, speaking to you here in my basement in the great state of Kansas. And in today's video, I am going to cover what I've been watching over the last week, a couple movies and some TV shows I will be talking about here on Jason the Old Millennial. Hello, everybody. Hope everybody's doing well here on a Saturday afternoon. I'm covering again what I've been watching this last week. Actually, been doing more re-watching of other movies I've seen before, and I've been going through a lot of Disney stuff on Disney Plus, which I'm not covering on the what I've been watching. I'm going to cover all that on a later date when I will do a ranking of like my favorite animated movies, my favorite live action movies. Right now I'm doing MCU movies, so. Then I'll do Pixar movies soon. So yeah, so that's what I'm doing there. Only really watched two new movies this last week. One being on YouTube. I caught this movie called The Bible in the Beginning, which came out I think in the 60s. I forgot to write it down, but yeah, this is a story or a movie that covers basically the creation in the book of Genesis in the Bible. Covers the creation story all the way to Abraham, who was called to sacrifice his son Isaac. It kind of ends with that story of Abraham and Isaac, anyways. And so it's called the Bible in the Beginning, but only covers part of Genesis. Of course, Genesis is a huge book. It has so much history in it. It covers a lot of important information. It'd be hard to make a movie out of just Genesis. Would make, huge. You can make a mini series off of Genesis. So this only covers like maybe half of Genesis or something like that, which is very interesting. Hollywood at this time was definitely doing a lot more biblical movies, and they've done some good. They've done some pretty good ones at this time period. My favorites being the Ten Commandments. Ben-Hur covers Jesus' crucifixion. They also have done like Samson and Delilah, I know, and they did like King of Kings, I think is one, or The Greatest Story Ever Told, or I think there's some Jesus stories or some movies they made about Jesus and his crucifixion around this time period. There's also a really good movie in the 50s called The Robe that I really like. So I do enjoy when they do a good version of the Bible stories. Nowadays, we don't get good stories about the Bible. If Hollywood ever tries to do something with the Bible, they usually mess it up. The best thing I've seen lately is like the Prince of Egypt. That was like DreamWorks' second movie they made back in the 90s, late 90s or so. Anyway, so usually Hollywood does a pretty bad job with this. So this is interesting. It's a 3-hour movie. It's pretty long. It is a lot to take in because they're covering so many different stories. So it's transitioning from one story to the other. Like we start with Adam and Eve. The Adam and Eve part is very boring. There's hardly any dialogue in that whole sequence. And not a lot going on except, they eat the apple and all that. And you see them walking naked through the Garden of Eden mostly in that segment. But it's interesting that they cover some stuff I haven't really seen in other movies. Like they cover Cain and Abel, which I haven't really seen, I don't think, in another movie covered. They cover the Tower of Babel, which is not a story usually get covered. And the Adam and Eve, you don't really see covered, or the creation story. I think the movie definitely gets better when you get to Noah. Noah is definitely an interesting part. And we have the director, John Huston, playing Noah in this scene. And Noah is definitely a story that they've tried to do in Hollywood, and they've messed up so badly. I've seen a couple different versions, and it's so terrible what they do with Noah. So this is definitely like the best version of the Noah story I've ever seen. And it's kind of impressive. I would say about this movie, it's definitely an epic movie, big budget, lots of extras, tons of extras, tons of makeup work and costuming, and the set designs are really great and grand. And the Noah scene, they have the animals, and they really have the real animals, of course, in this boat, and they have footage of all these different animals getting to the boat. So I do enjoy that they had this really large scale look at the Noah story. And then the whole flood sequence is actually done very well, where it looks like everything's really flooding, and so the production value is very good, I think, in all of it. So that was actually kind of interesting part of the movie, I think. The other is Abraham. They spent a lot of time with Noah, I feel like, and they spent a lot of time with Abraham, are two major story points, which is makes sense. Those are two huge stories in Genesis and very important stories to be told. Abraham is played by George C. Scott, so a great actor. I like that they got a really good actor to play that part. And we get kind of his story with Lot. Of course, we get the whole Lot and his wife, and Sodom and Gomorrah scene, which is really good. I thought they did a good job with that part. And so the Abraham story was pretty interesting. Of course, in the end with him going to sacrifice his son Isaac. So that's a good scene as well. Overall, I would say I like what they're trying to do. I like the aspirations of this big budget, movie about the Bible. I would say it's a little too slow moving at parts and a little too boring. It's way too long. 3 hours is a really long time to try to get through all these stories, especially when it's different stories and different characters and it's not one clear narrative throughout. I think it's a lot harder to do this kind of make this into a really good movie. But I like that they tried the ambition. I like the ambition of it. I'd say it's a light not recommend for me, like 2.5 out of 5 stars. I think you'd probably be pretty bored if you don't know anything about the Bible, you don't care about the Bible. I think it definitely helps if you know the stories very well anyways. But yeah, that's the Bible in the beginning. Caught it on YouTube. Other movie I really want to talk about is one I've been talking about when I was on Thursday. I was on Mike's Did You See That? Z Talks live stream with a couple other guys. And one thing I wanted to talk about in there, and I'll say here, I kind of went on a rant about a movie I saw recently on Disney Plus called Pinocchio. You probably heard. It came out maybe this last month or so. A live reaction remake of the Pinocchio story, of course, that Disney did back in 1940 or whatever. And so this is a remake with Tom Hanks playing the clockmaker, and I forget his name. I want to say Giuseppe, but that's not right. But yeah, so this is pretty good, it's pretty closely to the original. There's been so many Pinocchio stories lately, and I don't know if they all kind of follow the same format. This definitely follows a pretty much similar format to the animated version, of course, because they're both Disney-made movies. I know we had like an Italian, we've had like 2 Italian Pinocchios with Roberto Benigni. I haven't seen, and I know Benicio del Toro, is that right? No, Guillermo del Toro is doing a Pinocchio live stop animation movie on Netflix coming out soon. So I don't know if that's going to be much different. I imagine there'll be a lot of difference in there. But, there's definitely some nostalgia for the old Pinocchio, watching it as a kid, growing up with it. It's definitely like one of those Disney classics that everybody knows about. And there's some things I like about it, but mostly I'm not a big fan of the original. Like I watched the original not that long ago, and I do find the original to be kind of boring in there, and it's a little disturbing in some scenes. Definitely some hard watch there. I don't know, it doesn't pace as well. I thought this new movie, I'll say I really enjoyed this remake. I thought it was a really good remake of the original. In fact, I'd say it's my favorite remake so far, which you might think that's crazy. And I think that's just because I'm not as big a fan of the original. While like Lion King, Aladdin, I love the animation version so much that when they made the live action, I was just not on board. Because I was like, well, why remake a really good movie? Just go back to the animated movie, and it's much better, I think, than the live remakes. But this is one case where I thought the live remake added or definitely was better to the original, and this is my reason why. I thought it was actually better paced. I actually wasn't bored at all with the remake. I thought it transitioned very well through the different stories of Pinocchio. Going to school and then getting with the Stromboli and the puppet show, and then getting out of that situation, then going to Pleasure Island, that whole sequence, and then the end is with him and his father and Jiminy Crick and all of them being swallowed by the kind of whale-like monster, Monstrol or something like that. Now I'm forgetting the name, but yeah, so there's different sections to that story, and I thought they transitioned pretty well through the sections. I thought the music was pretty good. The animation overall, I thought was really good. I really enjoyed all the animated characters with the live action characters. I thought were done very well. One of my favorite parts of the movie that I liked is when he gets with Stromboli. Of course, it's this horrible thing where Stromboli he thinks he's joining this puppet show to become famous, and that he didn't realize that Stromboli is going to basically imprison him, and he won't get to see his father anymore, and that he's going to just work him to death and make money off of him. So it's this really terrible kidnapping sequence. Very sad. And I love that they added this new character, this female character who's a puppeteer at the show, who has this ballerina puppet, and she's able to communicate with Pinocchio through the ballerina puppet, I guess. And she's very nice to Pinocchio, and she has this whole sequence where she has this whole song and everything that I thought was really well done. And I really like that character. I thought it was a really good addition to the story. And I like that she really helps Pinocchio out. And then the one thing that bothered me about Pinocchio is that Stromboli never gets his due. Like, he's a terrible character, but nothing bad ever happens to him. Just Pinocchio escapes, and that's the end of the story of Stromboli. But I like here that we get Stromboli actually goes to prison for what he did, and this new character takes over the puppet show, and, you know, she's a good person and all this. So I like that we got some kind of satisfactory ending to Stromboli that we don't get in the original. So I always hate that. That's one thing you'll see about any movie I watch or show. If I feel like a bad character doesn't get, you know, something bad happened to them, you know, it bothers me quite a bit. 'Cause I always feel like there should be some kind of, you know, karma or something, you know, I don't know. Something should happen to satisfy, you know, the evil doings of that character. So that really helps me with this movie, that we get that from Stromboli. I still wish something bad would happen to Honest John, because he's terrible, because he sells Pinocchio into Stromboli, and you know, kind of this really bad salesman. Well, I will say Michael Key, who plays Honest John, does a really great job. I love his voiceover. Really, really good. And he's a really good, funny actor. So I thought that was really great casting in that part. Then when we get to Pleasure Island, I really liked Pleasure Island. Like, there's all these fireworks that go off. There's this big Ferris wheel. I love how it's lit up. And then they're on this, like, kind of this ride, almost like a Disney ride, where they're going like up and down and through all the different parts of Pleasure Island. Like, I just love that whole sequence. I thought it was like really, really well made. And yeah, and I might be the only one. I know there's some criticism, because in the original, they're smoking and they're drinking beer. In the Disney, this live action, they're just drinking root beer. I guess maybe they just you can't smoke, I think, on Disney. So they had to get rid of that. They kind of did. I don't think any Disney property can have smoking, I believe. So they had to get rid of the smoking part, and then the beer, I guess they didn't want kids drinking beer or whatever, so they drinking root beer. Anyways, that did bother me, but I know that bothers some people. Still, there's some disturbing aspects to that scene. It doesn't bother me as much as the original. I'd say there's still some darkness there, but anyways, but yeah, I thought the whole scene was really done well. Then we get to the last part, anyways, and the monster, the whale, I forget what they call it. It was Monstro, this like whale, sea beast, monster thing. That was all done very well, I think, as well. And it's kind of a scary monster. I thought done very well animated. Anyways, so overall, I thought there's some funny parts to it. I thought it was a fun movie. Wasn't bored, well paced. And I love that they had some good moments, script moments, where they introduce something at the beginning of the story, and it comes at the end of the story. Like, they use it. They say something at the beginning, and I didn't realize it was something important. And then at the end, I was like, oh, I remember they said this back in the beginning of the movie, and now they're using it. I love when they do that in movies. I always think that's good script writing. Introducing something at the beginning and then using it in an important situation to get them out of something at the end. So they did that a couple times where I kind of noticed, and I was like, oh, that was a good script writing, or good story point. Anyway, so there's a couple of moments like that I thought was really good in the movie. And overall, I liked the moral aspect of the movie, or the moral, what it's trying to say. It's saying you shouldn't lie. Lying is bad. That's a good moral lesson to learn, especially to kids. It's really heavy on obey your parents. I think that's a really good lesson. I think kids should obey their parents. So I'm like, yes, that's a good lesson to learn. And then also, it's good to apologize for your mistakes, because I didn't realize that from the first movie, but this one really hits on, and maybe it's there and I forgot, but when he lies, his nose grows, and the way he gets his nose to come back is to apologize. When he says, I'm sorry, and all that, his nose goes back to normal. So I'm like, all right, that's a great message, apologize, be humble, So I think the moral lessons are really good in this movie. So for me, I really like this movie. I give this a really solid recommend. 3.5 out of 5 stars to me is a solid recommend. I'm not saying it's like the best movie, but I was very surprised at how much I liked it. And everybody else hates this movie. All I hear is really bad reviews. So I'm maybe the only one who likes this movie, but I will go down in my grave to say I thought this was a good movie. And I'll argue with anybody why I like this movie so much. Anyways, that's Pinocchio. So I spent a lot of time on that because I feel like I have to spend time on Pinocchio because everybody trashes that movie. And I feel like I'm the one lone defender there. And so it's like, if you haven't seen it, you think, oh, this is trash. I'd say give it a chance. That's all I can say through this review. Is like, I'll give it a chance. He might come out and say Jason's a nutball and doesn't know what he's talking about. Maybe I don't. But maybe somebody will watch it and go, oh, this is not too bad. Anyways, and I think it would be a good family film to watch with your family overall. And I think it's a little more interesting and exciting than the original. That's just my take. But anyways, I don't have too much time to talk because I wanted to cover, I've been watching a lot of TV shows. I'll see if I can cover one here. I thought I'd cover She-Hulk. It's been talked about maybe to death already. The last episode came out a couple weeks ago, I think, maybe. Yeah, I watched all through, and She-Hulk was definitely a show when they first announced it, and you saw the first trailer. It looked terrible, and I thought, oh, I didn't think I was going to watch it. I kind of thought, I don't think I can watch this. It looks so bad. A lot of it's because of the CGI animation of when she turns into the She-Hulk. Something about the face looks weird. It just looks a little off. Her facial expressions. I don't know what it is, but it's kind of strange because it's like, oh, she's She-Hulk, so she grows up bigger, I guess. She's not like real muscular like the Hulk. She definitely still keeps like a woman figure, even though she gets like bigger, I guess, a little bit stronger, but just, not to the extent that the Hulk does. But anyways, it's an interesting show. What I didn't realize when I was like, I guess I'll give it a try, watch it. What I didn't realize it was more of like a sitcom, lawyer sitcom, where she takes on these unusual cases of people who have superpowers and are in legal trouble. And so she's in charge of defending them. And when we got to those parts, I actually kind of enjoyed it. I'll say this, everybody hates She-Hulk. My friend Jacob Martin, on his channel, he gave a really great rant on She-Hulk and how terrible it is and how much he doesn't like it. I know Jamie from In the Front Row has done a video on how much she doesn't like it. Pretty much everybody I've talked to thinks it's trash. Even people who haven't watched it are like, yeah, I think it's trash. And I was like, you haven't watched it yet, but yeah, so it's very hated. It's kind of seen as like the worst Disney Plus show so far. I don't think it is. Actually, I think it's better than some of the other stuff they put out. I think there's been some pretty terrible stuff that Disney Plus has put out lately, especially in Marvel. I think I really have not enjoyed what they put out lately. And so this actually I thought was better than what I've been seeing. I thought this was better than Miss Marvel, better than Moon Knight. I think it's better than Andor or Kenobi, some of these other Star Wars stuff. A lot of stuff has been really boring and terrible. And I'll admit, I can see why people don't like the show. It is cringy, some of the stuff that happens. But to me, I like the fact that it's only like 23 minutes long each episode. So it's a pretty quick watch. And overall, I'm not bored with the show. I'm bored with all these other shows like Moon Knight, Miss Marvel, like I said, Andor. I would go even Lord of the Rings, Ring of Power. All these shows are so boring to watch. I just have it's such a struggle getting through them. And that's like the worst thing to me for a movie or a TV show is being boring. Just don't be boring. You can be stupid, just don't be boring, I guess. And so you might say this show is stupid, and I get that, but it wasn't boring. Like I was entertained. Like there's some laughs in there. What I like about I thought the main actress did a pretty good job, and a lot of the other supporting actresses. And I like the cameos. Were really well done. And she does this whole fourth wall, kind of like a Deadpool kind of thing, where she does fourth wall breaks. Anyway, so I love the creativity there with the fourth wall breaks and everything, and the meta humor. I really like that kind of humor. So I thought it was actually a pretty funny show at times. And I like the whole court scenes. I thought were pretty humorous. And They're fresh and new and original somewhat, like I don't see in other shows. So I thought the show kind of brought something different. It had some creativity to it that I liked. And like I said, I wasn't bored. I was kind of entertained throughout. I won't say it's a great show. It's not like a great sitcom by any chance, but I do like that something different that I haven't seen yet in Marvel or Disney or Star Wars or whatever. So I kind of like that part of the show and what they did with it. I do like Wong, the cameos. Like Wong gets in 2 episodes. I thought he was great. What they do with him, and then Daredevil kind of comes in 1 episode, and he kind of comes in on the final episode as well. The biggest problem with the show, I think, is that it really goes nowhere. Like they're trying to set up a story, I think, of like someone's trying to get her blood, and they're trying to, I don't know, make another Hulk or something. I don't know. And so you're kind of at the beginning, towards the beginning of the movie or show, you're kind of set up to be like, okay, there's some big bad behind the scenes that we don't know and we won't find out to the end. And we'll have some kind of showdown or something like that. And so you're kind of anticipating something going on. And then we get to the end, the very finale episode, and we get this, like I said, very funny, creative idea of she busts out of Disney Plus, and we see the Disney Plus scene. She breaks out of her thing and goes into another show or something. And then we see her like she's kind of like in real life, and she's talking to this robot called Kevin Feige, or called Kevin, I think, which we think is Kevin Feige, but it's a robot called Kevin. I thought that was actually a pretty funny idea, very creative idea. And she has this whole conversation. I love when she says, you know, when are we getting the X-Men? And then she turns to the camera and like gives a thumbs up. Like that was really funny. Like I enjoyed a lot of that stuff. But then she kind of says, okay, this is how I want to end the show. And then they kind of go back and the show's like over and we didn't get any resolution to the story. So I think that was the biggest problem. The whole thing is like, okay, this is kind of a funny idea. It's creative, but yet it felt like the show was pointless. It did go nowhere. Where we're going to go next? It kind of ruined all that. So I think that was a bad idea in that sense. Like we should have got some kind of resolution to who was behind everything, and should have been some kind of showdown. And we get this weird, like, you know, everybody shows up at the end and it's like, what's going on? And then everything kind of just ends and closes up, and she ties a knot on everything. And it's like, okay, I don't feel like anything got resolved. And we even get the Hulk, Incredible Hulk comes back, Bruce Banner, and he says, I have a son named like Scar or something like that. And it comes out of nowhere, and you're like, what? And it never explained who this is. It's just like, okay, comes back with a son. I don't know. It was very weird how that was put in there and just never mentioned or explained what was going on there. Or is that something important, big that's going to come next season? I don't know. I don't know where the show go, if there'll be another season, because they got pretty bad reviews. But so there's some good ideas there I liked. Ultimately, they didn't end very well, I think, or land the story very well. So I think there are definitely some problems there, and there are definitely some cringy moments throughout the episodes. The Megan Stallion, whatever her name is, the whole twerking scene definitely was like, oh, I did not like that. I don't think anybody did. I was like, that's a little too much. They're trying a little too hard to get laughs, and it doesn't work sometimes. So there are definitely some problems there, but I didn't think it was the worst show. I didn't hate it. I was kind of somewhat entertained by it. So I might be the only one that says that, but that's just my take on it. But yeah, so that's She-Hulk there. That's my opinion on that. So I know I'm kind of going over time, but I like to go. So I just have to say thank you for watching this. Thank you for liking it. Thank you to all the subscribers for supporting the channel. I appreciate all of you, and I hope you have